Enjoying pro wrestling requires fans to play referee and look the other way when convenient. You must be able to stomach illogical events constantly, and it's nigh on impossible to get through any show if minor peculiarities are something you find too annoying. There are some smart moments, of course, but wrestling on the whole asks that viewers play along with the silliness and don't go digging for absurdities. Which is hard work because there are absolutely loads of them, and even WWE's own quirks often don't make much sense. Segments are rammed to the back arse with tiny details that, for whatever reason, producers just cannot get right. Look, before I start, yes, none of them really matter all that much, and no, I'm not the sort of joyless bellhat who watched Austin douse Vince in beer and wondered how he got the truck in, but still, it's just weird, isn't it, that this stuff is always weird. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 10 small details wrestling still can't get right. Number 10. Wrestlers watching monitors. First up, some very sore necks. Anytime WWE show wrestlers watching a match on monitors backstage, they're doing so in the most unrealistic, impractical fashion. Just take a look at ex-Raw General Manager Kurt Angle here, keeping a beady eye on Samoa Joe's beatdown. Instead of facing the screen head-on, like a normal person would, he's weirdly standing to the side. This is stupid. Nobody watches television like that. Imagine inviting a friend over to watch a movie and they decide to stand like this. You would encourage them promptly to sit the down and stop being so weird. But apparently that's not a problem in WWE land because everybody enjoys the same side-on viewing experience. Things are made much, much worse when groups of wrestlers are forced to stand in a line. Obviously, yes, directors want to see their faces and thus reactions to what's happening, but it's bloody nonsense. They should just watch TV like everyone else rather than acting like some kind of weird cardboard cutout. Number 9. Near falls. Steve Austin once remarked on his podcast that he rolled his eyes when younger wrestlers blatantly stare at the ref during near falls. Back in his day, Austin preferred to close his eyes and listen for/feel the cadence of the official's count before kicking out. That, to him, is why referees shout out each number as their hand slaps the mat. He, has a point. It's a total giveaway when stars keep a close eye on the count. They're effectively telling the viewer that there's no danger, they're part of a staged act, and they're going to magically summon the energy to raise a shoulder somewhere between 2 and 3. Near falls are 100 times more exciting when wrestlers play dead, pretend to be knocked out, or at least don't stare right at the referee instead of selling. Those glances remove any and all threat from the situation, and they kinda crap on big moves that are supposed to be impactful. Number 8. Countouts. Another problem with the humble wrestling referee is that they only seem to count wrestlers out of the ring when they can't be bothered. Other times, they just don't worry about it and let brawls happen willy-nilly without penalization. This is inconsistent, yes, but it also spoils the credibility of the count in the first place. Countouts are supposed to give each worker 10 short seconds to regain their composure and re-enter the ring for combat. It's a simple, effective idea and one that should create tension when a babyface is struggling to make it back in time. That illusion is shattered when refs take over a minute to count to 10. At Crown Jewel, Tyson Fury's TKO victory was sullied by the fact that the official couldn't be asked counting him and Braun out earlier in the match. Consistency is the key here, but referees are rarely, if ever, consistent. Those 5 counts they employ to warn wrestlers against disqualifications are similarly stretched. Not to sound like a big old nerd here, but rules mean nothing when those enforcing break them first. Number 7. Talking on the phone. There has never been a WWE promo starting with someone on the phone that hasn't been interrupted. You know how it goes, WWE cameras flash backstage after a match to show an authority figure fielding a call that goes nowhere. Suddenly, another performer enters the scene, there's a quick, "I'll call you back" piece of dialogue, and then the real meat of the matter occurs. Why the hell would cameramen and women be shooting something as boring as a family or business phone call in the first place? The insinuation is that the crew just follow important figures around, capturing everything they do, and then again, magically, they just so happen to shoot developments that further storylines on the show. This is dull, it is dull, it is dull, it is dull, 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 and worse, some promos expose that nobody is actually on the other end. This trope, and I use this term carefully, needs to die because it insults the intelligence of fans and is hardly essential to a skit's success in the first place. Number 6. People appearing out of nowhere backstage. Here's another silly little production habit that coincidentally makes me want to throw myself into a threshing machine. Wrestler A is cutting a promo in front of the backdrop when suddenly Wrestler B appears out of nowhere in front of them. Wrestler A, who seemingly lacks any peripheral vision, doesn't react until they're a step or two away, and they go on to trade banter whilst facing the camera and barely looking at one another. It's not the only example of people appearing like they've crash-landed through the ceiling. Here you'll see Sasha Banks walking down a corridor, which is of course another highly illogical piece of filmmaking from wrestling stalker-like camera crew, but I digress, before backstage interviewer Sarah Schreiber leaps out from nowhere to accost her for some comments. This is so terribly contrived. If she really needs a few words from the boss, why is she just loitering around in a random hallway hoping that she walks past? Number 5. Financial impact. Most wrestling fans growing up would have believed that every single man and woman on television was a millionaire. I mean, why wouldn't they be? They're WWE superstars for crying out loud, and they are akin to rock stars or Hollywood's finest. Sometimes both. The truth is that not everyone is swimming in seas of cash. But still, they are hardly skint. One summer storyline called for Shane McMahon to fine Kevin Owens $100,000 for putting his hands on an official at SummerSlam. Immediately, Kevin Owens fell to his knees and claimed that Shane was putting the future of his family at risk. How would he be able to pay for his kids to go through college or university with such a penalty? Kevin Owens is not exactly WWE's best paid star, but he's still on north of $2 million. This fine is less than 5% of his annual wage. Look, I'm not saying that he wouldn't miss it. Hell, I would miss 5% of my annual salary, but it wouldn't exactly leave me destitute. WWE tried the same realistic edge when multi-time world champion Shawn Michaels claimed in 2009 that the world's financial meltdown meant he had to become a chef. Just stop this, please. Number 4, the dynamic to relationships. For proof that WWE just never quite get how relationships work, just look at Seth Rollins' heel turn. Months prior, he and Becky Lynch were acting like a pair of love-struck teenagers flirting over school lunch, but as soon as he got his gang of boys together, they just dropped the thing entirely. Eventually though, she announced she was pregnant, showing that her and Rollins were still in a very normal, very healthy relationship, but had him sell it as if she just told him that Kevin Owens was the father. Over in AEW, Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian have taken turns hanging off each other like high school prom dates, and Candice LeRae kicked Ciampa in the dick purely because her husband was evil now, so she must be too. Wrestling 100% of the time prefers awkward, dorky soap opera exchanges to realistic, mature romance, and presents everyone involved in a relationship as a doe-eyed moron, not a credible athlete. Number 3, wrestlers waiting a week to respond. Yes, okay, wrestling TV is episodic, but that comes with some minor pitfalls. When Roman Reigns was demanding an explanation for his attempted murder last summer, he wasn't apparently doing any digging when the cameras weren't on. Instead, he was weirdly content to wait until the Blue Brand's regularly scheduled hours each Tuesday before interrogating suspects. The issue is not exclusive to Roman. There are countless examples of wrestlers talking about what happened last week, like they're powerless to explore it off-screen in between one episode and the next. Don't they use those phones they're always shown talking on to kick off backstage promos? It is maddening. In the real world, situations would develop on other days too. It wouldn't be difficult for WWE to film some stuff for social media or YouTube that furthered angles without wrestlers having to pretend there's some nonsensical restriction governing their investigation. Hell, even NXT managed to do this with the Performance Center. What is stopping the main roster? Number 2, interruptions. If wrestling heels weren't dramatic, egotistical souls, they'd forego entrance music when interrupting matches so they could get the jump on rivals. But they don't. They prefer to make sure production has their tune queued up for maximum theatrical impact, and when you think about it, that's ridiculous. It also suggests that those in charge of the music/lighting/trons are sort of in cahoots. Elsewhere, those revolving door promo intrusion segments are so played out it's unreal. Few wrestlers take the time to contextualize their interruption. Something as simple as saying, "I was strolling through the back getting ready for my match and heard what you said," would suffice here, but we just never ever get that. WWE are in particular guilty of this. They're so comfortable with the established formula that they seem scared to break free of it. It would be refreshing if heels were smarter or wrestlers chose to interrupt at more spontaneous moments, but who am I kidding? Number 1. Using the announce table as a weapon. The mid-90s introduced everyone to the tried and tested crowd-popping announce table breakage spot. Since then, it's not exactly been used sparingly. In fact, there's sort of a sense that fans might go home disappointed if they don't see at least one person go through that commentary desk. For some reason, it works better than a standard table. The bump is undeniably fun despite being overused, but there's one gripe with it that needs to be discussed. Namely, wrestlers clear away monitors, pens, pencils, phones, cups, crowns, wires, and anything else that could potentially harm their co-workers when they're slammed through the thing. Isn't maximizing their pain the whole point? Badass wrestlers ready to thump enemies through a ringside table shouldn't be worried about their back, head, or any other body part colliding with the corner of a TV screen. That kind of damage should be the priority, in fact. Today's pro wrestlers are just so considerate about their fellow bone benders. I mean, look, here is Dean Ambrose throwing Renee Young her phone. So there you have it, those are 10 small details wrestling still can't get right, read to you by a man who cannot believe he didn't use the words Rusev, Lashley or Lana at least once. Let me know what you made of it all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share and subscribe. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I have of course been Adam Cleary, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.